Hey, how's it going, Big Mike? So
What's
happy
up,
to have you
man?
on Elite Agent Talk for the second time. The first time, man, it was a classic.
Been a while, huh?
Yeah, it was 3 years ago. But that was one of my favorite episodes. Definitely one of the funnest I've had because we got to reminisce. Because me and you come from around the same time, we're around the same age, same market. So we had a lot of things in common. But yeah, thank you for your friendship and your support all these years. But how you been?
I've been good, man. Just like everybody else, adjusting, processing, reinventing myself, you know, going through it like most of us are
Yeah,
in
a
this.
lot has happened in the last 3 years, especially in the California market. But one of the things that, definitely have to talk to you about is your life insurance production. I mean, 249 policies in 2023 last year, and you're actually on pace to do even more than that with 78 year to date. Right now, we're at April 12th, 2024. So we got to talk to you about that. But before we talk, life insurance production, how because 100 used to be the big number.
It was, I think when you and I started, 100 seemed impossible, you know, and 100 was really never like the goal, which is funny. When I started as an agent, career agent, reserve agent, it was about staying alive and, trying to make it as an agent and cross-selling whatever I could. Um, and 100 just kind of became its own thing. Initially, I didn't like shoot for that number specifically, but, after having as many one-on-one appointments as I would have, we usually ended up around that number every year, right? And I still remember how there wasn't too many agents doing that 16 years ago. It's crazy how long it's been now. Um, but the game's changed. Like there's a lot of people in the running for 100 life. There's people right now that have already hit 100. For farmers, and we're in April. Like just the numbers now are crazy. Like I look at it, man. Like I almost feel like I'm happy to still be in the game, but like now like agencies are like really producing, you know. You didn't see these numbers 15 years ago. It's like
Yeah,
crazy.
but you say you're in the game, but you're on top of the game. I mean, 250. Is that the first time you wrote over 200? I know that was
Yeah,
number one in
yeah, you know what?
Number
Yes.
one in California,
Yeah, I
you
ended up
know.
being number one in California, which is kind of cool. That's never happened. My best year prior to that was 185. That was like a really good year for me. And that was 2011. So, I've always, what's crazy is I was having really good years in 22 and 20 and 21 and 22. I think I was like over 140, 160. And to me, I was like, man, these are crazy numbers. Last year, though, was just outrageous. And this year is even busier when it comes to that. And, you know, I think the biggest shift for sure was for a long time, it was just me, you know, and now it's like I have a team, like now it's like I have help, right? So I'm not trying to just be Superman all the time. I learned the hard way that, I was, I've taken time to work on myself as far as like coaching and mentorships and experience. So I'm definitely at a point in my life where, I'm way more adaptable. Like I don't play hero ball. Like I have nothing to prove. I'm really, I'm really happy with where my agency is, with my team. And it shows, right? Like you don't get to 250 by yourself. I mean, even 250 wasn't even a number. 249 wasn't even something we were shooting for. It just kind of like it always kind of does. It organically turned into that, right? And a lot of people sometimes say like, "Wow, man, what are you doing over there?" Or like, "How do you write so much?" And I think what's funny is that we're really not doing anything that's like special. but we do talk about it a lot. You know, like I talk to some commercial agents, and these guys are hounding the phones, marketers. You're not gonna get here unless you got systems, right? And
Right.
even if you think you don't have systems, you probably do, whether they're good or bad. Um, I think my team finally picked up on my conversations, and they kind of emulate a little bit of what I do. But we can go into like how we transition from a potential lead to probably an actual close. Then we can talk about that in a little bit. But
No, please talk about that now. We want to know.
um,
How do you do it?
you want to just get right to it, huh? All right. So I
Oh, we're
think,
gonna make them wait to the end of the video, maybe.
yeah, you know what? I think incentivizing, is that how you say it? You know, paying my team for a lead has become a big shift in what we did. So I still only pay if we issue it, but sometimes they don't even have to close it. It's just, hey, if we, to me, a lead is different than somebody else. But if we have somebody on the phone and we've brought it up, to me, that's already a lead, you know.
Mhm.
Um, at that point, it's on me, right, to really provide the value behind what it is. And, I tell people all the time, what really, really helped me was COVID.
Mm.
COVID changed everything. The uncertainty, nothing was promised, the fear. Um,
People dying.
Dude, I got sick. I think I mentioned it the last time. I got sick right away, and it messed me up. And my whole team went home, and I really got to get back to just the basics. Meaning, prior to COVID, I think I was running fast. Like I was busy traveling. I think like 2019, 2018, that was probably like some of my busiest years as far as like speaking for districts or for the company. And then COVID kind of just like slowed everything down. And then what happened is I sent my team home, right, for safety reasons. And I realized I couldn't work from home.
Mm.
Dude, I don't know if it was cabin fever or what. I was like, I can't do this. So I would come into the office every day like it was just another regular day. I think that helped my like mental. I didn't, I just felt like I had a routine, right? And I was taking so many more calls, and people started dying, clients of mine, and I was like, all right, man, this is like real, real, right? And given that I already talk about life insurance so much, that's what kind of kickstarted the production to where we are now, I think. Because I think 2020, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think I wrote 100 and like 30, 140 policies, which was way more than I was averaging. I would get to December and we'd end the year with 105, 110. I think we did like 130, 140, and then the next year we did another 130, 140. Um, I mean, last year, I think the disruption is part of why we were able to really pick it up even more because at the end of the day, we were just talking to more people, you know?
Hmm.
And when I'm talking to more people, it's one of those things where, what's a lead to me is different than what's a lead for you. You know, I always I always like to talk to agents when I'm at these events. Like people think, okay, Mike's going to speak and like I'm going to share, but I'm also there to learn. I think a lot of people stop learning and stop growing. I love to hear what agents are up to because it gives me like a feeling for what the market is. And at the end of the day, the market has shifted. Like I look at the leaderboard right now, and there's a ton of production, right? Meaning people have adapted and the priority has now shifted up. Like life insurance isn't a product that you can just turn on overnight. It's something that you got to have a feel for it and then a little bit of a passion for it, right? Um, and unless I think like for someone like me, man, I have so many different stories about life insurance. Um, it's just become like a big part of what I do. It's not it's not even like I think about it anymore. It's just become very seamless, you know? And 2022 was a rough year for me. Very personally, it was a very rough year for me. My best friend passed away, and just a few years older than I am. And that just, for someone like me, man, it just locked me in even more so, right? Um, so, I mean, I really don't think about it anymore. Like now it's just about survival. It really is, I'm not writing a lot of auto. Most people aren't in California. Home insurance has become very difficult, right? Um, so I looked at it as well as I said, you know what, if I can double down, have more appointments, I'm making up a lot of the commission that I'm losing, right? And I'm doing the right thing for people. Um, I don't see why more people wouldn't dive into that type of mentality.
Yeah. No, yeah, sorry to hear, and I saw about your friend,
Yeah.
I know what you're doing for him, what you're doing right now. It's making him real proud. But yeah, I think for people who don't know, I think what do you call it, the disruption is about, our book of business being underwritten and everybody having to turn in pictures and things like that. So would you say most of your policies that you write is from your existing book of business, if not all, or is it
I mean,
still
the
some people?
life insurance,
Hmm.
I'm going to say like 95%. It's really rare when I get a life lead that's not part of the book. I do get
Gotcha.
referrals, but they tend to be clients referring themselves or like something like that, I don't market towards life. I used to be a part of like those marketing groups like BNI and stuff like that, but um for some reason it didn't translate to wins for me. I find that for me, my wins come when I'm here.
Mhm.
Like I have a pretty big book. We have like now that my brother and I are gonna combine, we're gonna be close to like 7,000 PIF. Um, and I haven't even scratched the surface on a lot of the potential even within my book because I try not to market too hard through it. I like it to be organic because I think sometimes people can kind of sense when you're trying to sell them something,
Mhm.
and that's not really what I'm trying to do. You know, um, I think you have to be very authentic when you're having these conversations, and also be comfortable enough to know that the conversation is going to get a little uncomfortable, right? Because life insurance is not a topic that people really want to talk about, or it's not a pleasant thing, right? But there's a lot of living benefits to life insurance that people don't really realize. And you know, I'm that guy, man. If I see like these what do they call GoFundMe's on social media,
Hmm.
not that I cringe because it's very difficult right now, and then inflation is out of control. So the cost of living here in California is very difficult, and a funeral is very expensive. But especially when I see someone young, God forbid I know them. It's like, damn, like how did I not do that? Or, how do we not, but for the most part, I can tell you that if you know me or we're buddies or, we went to college together or high school or whatever that may be, I'm probably going to bring it up. You know, that started because, when I left State Farm as a producer, I don't know if I shared this story before, but when I left State Farm as a producer, my buddy who passed away in 2022, his older brother passed away in '08, and that was pretty rough, right? And it was one of those things that kind of shifted me to say, you know what, life is short. Why not take a chance on myself? And I did. I left and I became a farmer's agent. And for like a long time, a lot of the stuff I was doing was for him because he didn't have any, and I didn't have any on him. And I remember thinking, like, you know what am I so intimidated about? Right. And I think when something that traumatic happens, you don't really have the same fear. So at least I don't, right?
Hmm.
That affected me personally, and I think I've had a few personal things that have happened, and because I've seen the way life insurance has come through many, many, many times, um, I just feel like I'm gonna do my due diligence and at least bring it up, or at least I can say, you know what, I did my part. Do I close every single policy? No. You know, if you write 249 policies, how many do you think were either declined, and how many no's do you think I got throughout the year?
Oh
That's just
man.
that's just the net, right? It's like a paycheck. The gross was huge. My net ended up just being that, you know? And that's another thing, is I don't get discouraged. It doesn't really make a difference to me anymore. I think when I talk to agents and they're like, well, I have this guy and I've been after him for 2 months and he's interested. And it's like, okay, that's great. That's just one lead. Let's say even if you do sell it, now what? You got to go get another one, right? And now more than ever, the company has shifted towards, heavy on life, especially in California, from our commissions and all that. And I feel like it's kind of going back to the old ways because if you remember when we were coming back in the day, as a career agent, you needed to do like I think four a month or four a quarter or something like that. And it was a
Hmm.
requirement.
Hmm. For
I
subsidy stuff,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, for subsidy and all that. Um, I think now that it's a requirement, we're going to see more production regardless, because things are getting more expensive and we cannot afford to make less,
Yeah,
right?
and yeah, from survival point. But yeah, I think it's a good thing that it's a requirement because that gets us in the habit of at least writing some because you could get in the habit
Or
of not
getting your
writing
yeah, or
any.
just getting in the game, right?
Yep.
Like sometimes I think what happens too is like people want to go from like I did zero in 2023 and now I'm going to shoot for 100. It's like, man, why don't we shoot for 12? Why don't you do one a month, right? Why don't you just try to do one right now and see how you feel about that, right? Why don't you try to do five in a month and take that win, right? I'm not saying don't be ambitious. I'm just saying it's easier to set a bar and then hit it and then feel good about yourself than shoot for something and end up somewhere. I mean, I guess that's cool too, but when you're just getting started, I think you gotta just have wins.
Yeah,
Just
small wins.
small wins to feel good about yourself and then build on those wins. I mean, at this point, like I celebrate, I don't care what the product is. That's the thing about me, like for me, it's like I celebrate the fact that we got a product in the household. Farmers has a lot of products, you know. I just happen to be a big fan of all of them, right? I don't discriminate against my products. If Farmers is going to give me a product that's going to help me and is going to help my situation, being the type of client that I already have, might be very hesitant, or I know the follow up is going to be very difficult, and introducing an exam might just completely stop the conversation. If I have a product that eliminates all that, great. And if that's enforced, great. Now I'm gonna do a 90-day follow up and say, hey, remember we started with this one. If you're open to the exam, let's set something up that's going to give you a little more coverage, right? And go from there. But at least now there's something in force so that um, if they choose not to do the exam or they don't qualify or whatnot, something's in force, right?
Yeah, something is so much better than nothing.
Dude, all the time, all the time. I tell people, you know what? I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's a graded death. I don't care if it's a simple whole life or a simple term. If it's in force and it pays, nobody's questioning what the product was. No one's at the funeral saying, what kind of product did this guy have when he died? Nobody cares, right? The only thing that matters is that there was money to help pay for whatever the cost of those incurring costs are going to be.
Yeah, and I just did the math right now. 249 pulses, 20 a month. So the way you're describing it, and let me know if it's wrong, but it sounds like the team is funneling to you when you're doing the closing, or are there team members that close them themselves too?
Both. I have a producer, and it's funny, dude. Like I hear him talk, sounds a lot like me. I guess you hang around me enough, you're gonna kind of, but um, they do at times. They can close them on the spot, but since I enjoy doing that part of the FFR so much, they like to bring them to me too. Like, hey, I have this lead, and it's like, all right, cool. Like, they sit here with me. We either set up a Zoom or we try to meet with them, or sometimes we can try to do something over the phone, but the conversation is had, you know. It doesn't take a lot of information to really close a life policy. Just like people have like a checklist for, an auto or a commercial policy, you got to have a checklist for life. You don't want to have too many conversations because you don't want to scare someone away. So it's very important that when you are having that conversation and someone is ready, that's the last time you're going to have to gather anything, you
Hmm.
know? And that's why I like my team. Oh, I'm sorry, Dan. My sensor went off.
No worries.
Um, I think that's why the close ratio is so high is because we try to eliminate the back and forth. It's like, all right, you're interested? Cool. Listen, we're going to collect all this different information. Let's submit this policy, and we'll call you shortly to see if you got approved or not. Right? Um, I think that helps a lot because number one, we're not over talking, we're not providing too much information. Um, Keeping things very simple, streamlined, and letting the conversation kind of take a life of its own. At times, I find is good as well because I like to start with entry level policies as far as a conversation, and
Hmm.
then kind of see where the client feels about it, get a feel for it, and then if they have interest or they show, oh, okay, well, what else is available? Or okay, well, now we're having a real conversation, right? That's how I'm going to talk about, $1 million policy, or we can talk about an IUL or a UL or a VUL. But I have a lot of tools in my toolbox, right? The key with me is starting the conversation, just the introduction. You know, I can't tell you how many times when I'm doing an auto, like, oh, who does your auto insurance? Sometimes people just start asking, like, how much do you pay? I like to ask, who insures you? Right. So if you have your autos with Mercury and let's say you had your home with State Farm, all I'm doing is setting up a conversation piece, meaning, okay, well, if you have your autos with Mercury and you have your home with, let's say, Allstate, who do you have your life insurance with? That's a piece in that conversation that a lot of people tend to leave to the end of the conversation, right?
Hmm.
So instead of leaving it to the end, I like to start my conversation that way because you'll be surprised. Let's say, and I'm just throwing random numbers out there, but let's say like 7 out of 10 times, I'm going to get a, what do you mean? And that's all it takes, right? Now the whole conversation is going to shift. And if somebody says, well, I have insurance through work, which is a very popular one, the one thing COVID taught me is nothing is guaranteed. Layoffs can happen, companies can go out of business. If you're just going to strictly rely on something like that, recent history has taught us that that doesn't mean there's a safety net there. Things can change very quickly, right? So having your own policy in force is probably more important than it's ever been because with the economy that we're in, things are very unpredictable, right? Layoffs are a real thing. And because of that, I'm a little, that's where I kind of like draw the line if somebody's like, oh, well, I'm like, well, no, listen, I've seen it. And then now I have multiple stories to back up what I mean. And you know what? There is going to be a small savings on an auto or whatever. So why not have your own, right? Like I've always felt that way. And I would probably give the same scenarios, but it didn't hit home as much as it does now. Like now people are probably a little more willing to say, oh, yeah, you know what? You're right. versus, oh, that's never going to happen to me, you
Yeah,
know? So I think because of that, the conversations have changed a little bit, right? And I'm a little older, man. So, like when I was 30, sitting in front of somebody versus, 42, I think there's maybe a little more credibility. And
absolutely.
and I think the experience has really helped. I've learned from a lot of my past mistakes where I used to be so quick to want to close something. Like I was like, oh, I was like just trying to close, right? Now it's like I'm more patient for sure.
Mhm.
So since I'm a little more patient, the conversations can develop
Yeah,
into much larger accounts. I made MDRT last year, which was cool for me
congratulations.
because thank you. I made it on straight life production, not my FFS, not my health, straight life, like that was a big deal for me because prior to last year, I had never done it that way. I had made an MDRT, but I had not made it strictly on my life production, right? So I know now, like I'm writing much larger premiums. At times people you could still be writing more premium. Maybe I could, but I'm on I stay in my lane, like I'm not trying to be anybody else, right? I'm happy with being able to provide someone at times who most likely, had it not been me, would have never gotten it anyways.
Yeah,
And
you're protecting families.
yeah, and you know what? I'm doing a lot of them, and a lot of them add up. I spoke recently in Ontario for a district, and I was talking about how, like let's say you do a $25 a month policy. It doesn't seem as cool as $100 a month policy, right? But if you do four of them, you're at $100, right? And those four policies are probably policies that would have never been enforced anyways.
Yep,
So the way I've looked at it is I don't really get too wrapped around numbers as far as like trying to get to a certain thing. Like I've learned in my career has been very consistent that if I just keep doing something really good consistently, results just kind of take care of themselves, right? But it's got to be consistency. You got to be very consistent, and you can't derive from it. You're a guy who's very routinish. You know what I'm talking about. Like, you gotta just master your craft over and over, and then you just keep getting better and better and better at it. I am much better at this now than I was 10, 11 years ago when I made my first president's council, right? I like to think that, I missed PC 2 years in a row and I made 10. And those missing those two kind of put a lot of things in perspective for me in the sense that I was like, I never knew what that was going to feel like. And um, I was like, oh man, it's like I felt like everything was over. And then, I came in the office the next day and I just got back to work and my numbers stayed very, very consistent. And then the market shifted. And then the market shifted and suddenly, numbers that I was doing are good again. Shocker, right? And I'm glad that I didn't derive from what worked for me because I could have probably shifted and maybe chased something that was out of my wheelhouse.
your strength.
Um, yeah. And instead, I said, you know what? I'm going to just get better at what I'm good at.
Mm,
And instead, I doubled down on my own production and what I'm good at. And I started having more FFRs, right? And I like the organic side of the sale. I like growing within my book because I find retention is high when it's done that way. When I've tried to buy it, it hasn't always worked for me. You know, like I guess what I'm good at doesn't always translate to all the other avenues. So, um, 16 years in, like I'm not trying to reinvent myself. I'm just really trying to just improve. Um, and, add new facets to our agency. Like commercial has always been through farmers my Achilles heel, meaning I write commercial, but I definitely don't write as much as I'm probably capable of. And, I'm in a district now where commercial is a big deal and it's valued and it's pushed and you know maybe that's what was missing for me. Like I just need training. For a guy like me, it's just let me figure it out and then I can apply it, right? But personal lines takes up so much of my time and it always has, that it's been hard to also shift. And because for someone like me, I need to learn it so that I can hire someone and then train it. Like I don't know if I'm just maybe hesitant to just hire someone with that type of experience because there's a part of me that wants to learn it first, because I don't want to just put stuff in the book that's going to cost more work later. I'm learning right now that, doing things right the first time will make my life a lot easier moving forward, because all of this new underwriting guidelines have become consuming, you know, but I'm rewriting some of this stuff or correcting it or whatever, Um, and it's giving me a little bit more peace of mind because I know now more people are covered properly. We're rating households probably more accurate than we were before, but that's come from a different shift, like culturally, some of the requirements we have now were not really a thing that we thought about in the past, from mileage to odometers to when the car was actually purchased, to the date. Now that I'm paying more attention to detail, um, I'm finding that, you know, if a claim happens, I'm way more comfortable. Hey, you know what? This happened. They call in. I'm not really concerned anymore. You know, for the last year and a half, I was calling a lot of these households trying to clean them up. Like, hey, you know what? Looks like your kid got in an accident. We didn't have them rated. We need to not only rate this kid, but we need to rate them properly. You know, that shift, those conversations have also led to a lot of life policies because, like I was sharing with you earlier, you know, I tell a lot of my clients, okay, you know what? After all these changes that we made, let's say there's a $300 to $400 savings, right? I like to call them credits, but let's say there's a $300 savings. I used to be very happy with uh, providing that savings and then moving on to my next, you know, thing on my desk to do, my next task. Well, I started switching it up and I started saying, what are you going to do with those $300? Or what are you going to do with the $400 or $500? I didn't ask that question before,
Mm.
and now I've implemented just a simple change like that has led to, you know what? Uh, this lady who was diabetic got declined through some other company. I said, well, look, she was just looking for a funeral policy. She's not terminal. I wrote a graded death on her. She was like one of the first ones I wrote. And I said, this is a really good product. I've never really thought about this product. And farmers lowered the age minimum. And that was a big help for me because, there's a lot of Latinos who are 35 with diabetes, you know, who didn't have any options. Now they do, right? And there's a cash, you know, there's an interest in cash growth in the policy. There's a benefit, there's a living benefit in that. And I'm having so many different conversations, you know, and that's how you really go from 100 to 200. It's There's been an evolution of that conversation, right? And sometimes it's like a simple ask, like just a small change has led to much different conversations. I didn't have those before. And like I'm busier than I was, but I'm busier doing things I like too. Like I really enjoy, even if it's a 30, 40-minute convo and getting to an end goal. And honestly, it doesn't really bother me if the commission, I mean, if the premium is only like $30 or $45. It's a policy that wasn't going to be written anyways.
You
Has
change your
someone not,
life.
well, I'm willing to spend the time despite of what the reward is.
Right.
right?
Yeah,
At this
you're doing it
point,
for really, really doing it for them.
at this
Sounds like
point,
not for
yes.
you.
At this point, yes. Like it's not about putting a number on the board. It's like, you know what? I actually have something that I can help you with. Versus before, I think I was, like I told you, kind of quick to close. Like before, maybe if I insured the dad, I was like, all right, cool. I got a policy. I don't want to be pushy. Let's move on. Well, now it's like, let's talk about your wife. Let's talk about the beneficiaries you have. Why don't we have insurance on them? Right? There's there's so many more small questions, and the conversation, the dialogue has grown, right? Like I'm not just shooting a free throw now. I'm going for a three. I'm looking at all of it. I'm looking at the whole household, and I'm approaching it differently. And like I told you, man, I'm a little more patient. You know, things have slowed down a little bit for me. That might be coming with age. I'm not sure, but um, I've always had a short attention span. But lately I've noticed that like I have more patience for these FFRs and these conversations, and the results are showing it, you know?
Man, so much awesome stuff. Thanks for sharing that, Mike.
Yeah.
Man, I don't even know where to start. You just dropped so many gems there. But the word you use that I really like to hear is evolution. Because
Yeah.
you're already a star. You're kicking it butt from day one, from year one. Making PAC the first year you're eligible, but to have the humility to keep evolving. And I really like to hear that you didn't like. It wasn't like a revolution. It wasn't like you changed everything. Like nothing like
Mhm.
changed. Like you didn't like fire all your staff, or you didn't like
No.
try a different product, or you didn't like go to commercial. It's just like small changes over time and over time. It's what's resulting in that. So that makes us feel good as listeners because okay, well, we got something going. We're gonna keep improving every year, tweaking things, adding like a phrase that you just added. You saved people money. Now you're gonna say, hey, where that's gonna go to, or talking to a spouse and just really being patient. I think that's a small change, but it's how it's been a game changer. Other thing I really want to share is what you said I think was really important is who do you have your life insurance with? I really want to kind of stick on that point because I thought that was a great line because that almost implies like you do have life insurance, right?
You want to put the assumption out there. And you've sold life policies. You know what it's like. Sometimes you really are the first person that's ever brought it up, or you might be the first person who's ever asked that question, right? Um, Even to this day, even though life insurance is more common, it's fascinating how so many people are just like, what are you talking about? Or never planned on it, or it was never on the radar, you know? Um, Something that I always share too is I don't always close right away, you know? Sometimes you got to be patient. You got to plant some seeds, have that conversation. And when they call again, hey, remember we chatted about this? Like, where are you now? Right? For agents, especially, I'm going to be at the roadshow next week, and they want to talk about a couple of things. And sometimes, they ask, like, let's give real information that people can take away with them, right? And I always say things like, well, you can hear me speak and I might motivate you for 10 days, but unless you really go and apply and write down and really shift something in your agency, the motivation will fade, right? I think when you have agents right now who have just like struggled with just trying to write life, I think some of them are trying to swing for the fences. You know, I think if I can give anybody advice, especially if you want to get to a certain number, like for me, a number that's not negotiable is we got to get to 18 and a quarter. You know,
Yep, for the
it,
BRC
yeah,
too.
it's something that I also need to maintain my agency and my staff, right? Um, I'm not in a place where I can just afford to take that kind of a cut, right? So obviously, since this is something that I'm already passionate about, it just kind of happens seamlessly. But I tell agents, you got to gain some confidence. Like, if you strike out all day trying to sell something or making calls and you're not getting anything, but 4:55 before you're hitting home, you write any life policy, you're gonna feel pretty good about yourself.
Yep.
Your whole mood is gonna shift, you know. And I tell people like, just write a couple of easy products just to get your confidence up, whether that's, a term policy or a simple whole life, whatever it is. Just write something, to feel good about. And then, write another one, you know, and then once you feel like, okay, I'm starting to get the hang of this, you know, read an illustration and, shoot for an IUL, right? Get FFS license. Like, there's got to be growth. Like, how many times I see people kind of burn out, or I see them like doing well and then they kind of just fade. And I think it's because it does get a little hard. And sometimes people want to like bite off more than they can chew. And I mean that in a way where you might not have the confidence or the knowledge. And then you're sitting in front of someone and the conversation got awkward because now you're being asked questions that you don't really know how to answer. Right. And now you have like this, you failed at it or it got weird and now you don't want to talk about it again. You know,
Hmm.
that probably happens a lot.
Yeah, overselling it, trying,
Yeah, over
making people feel
talking.
uncomfortable with the budget. Just want to find something that just helps them, not like
Yeah.
trying to sell a big policy for your check.
You know, if you start hunting for your own goals sometimes, I find that because I'm guilty of it too. Um, I find that those don't tend to stick or
Mm,
they cancel. And, um, I'd rather be patient and, apply something in the proper budget, right? Than getting a little greedy sometimes, because one thing is agreeing to $100 a month payment. Another thing is actually having coming out of their account. You know, if things get a little hard, they're not going to cancel HBO and Disney Plus. They're going to call you and be like, hey, man, I don't want that life policy anymore. It's getting kind of expensive over here, you know? So you kind of, it's really up to you to, when you're sitting in front of somebody, to really gauge because, and what I mean is you can't judge a book by its cover. And it goes both ways, meaning you see someone and you don't think they have $25, but that's the guy that has 2,500 bucks a month, you know? So approaching everything the same way for me has worked on both ends, meaning since I don't care if I think it's $20 or $100, I'm going to approach it the same way when I start. Most of my big policies have come from the most basic conversation, you know, like, oh, well, look, here's $150,000 level term. If you do the exam, you're looking at $26. Oh, well, that's only 150. What do you have for half a mil? Oh, well, okay, we're having a completely different conversation now, right? But since I'm not pushing half a mil from the beginning, I think it also opens different doors for me.
So you
Sometimes
always start with the most basic level?
I just bring it up. Like
Hmm.
I always say, look, at you're 36 years old, it says you can start one for like $26. That's how cheap it is to start. And I just do that as a intro, right?
Hmm.
And then I let them and I let the conversation kind of evolve from there.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that's great because it kind of, when you say, hey, you want to talk about life insurance, and they're already kind of have a defensive mode, like, oh crap, how much
yeah,
is this going
real
to
quick.
be? So I think getting that out of there, it's like, it's as low as this kind of probably gets them more intrigued or less intimidated to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, do I like the big premiums? Who doesn't, right? Who doesn't like writing a $600 a month? I mean, anybody would be excited,
Hmm.
whether that's commercial, life, auto, doesn't matter, right? But what I don't want to do is write a $400 a month policy that lapses in 3 months, and now everything is all screwed up. You
It's
know,
not good for them. That's like a
not
waste of
good.
money right there.
Not good for them to start off with. It's a waste of money. Now the entire household's going to change because now we're losing discounts, and it's not a clean relationship anymore. You
Mm.
know, maybe it's created some doubt. Maybe it's they're looking at you like, oh man, this guy oversold me or whatever. And I've one too many times that's happened where I said, well, I'm sure you can probably do this much, right? And then it's like, nah, man, it was too much. It's like, oh, okay, well, that didn't go well, right?
Mm.
Um, and that's kind of when I started changing my approach to more like, look, this is where we can start, but where are you really? You know? And like I told you, man, if there's any kind of savings, whether it's two, $300, five, $600, at that point, it's on you. Are you gonna let that client walk out with that money, or are you gonna create an IRA? Are you gonna, there's when you have, I have my 63, I'm FFS licensed. I can have different conversations, and I can have different conversations because I've had so many over the years that I don't even think about it. I'm just talking. I'm just getting to know someone, and instead of being so quick to want to close, if you would just take the time to really get to know these people, what their interests are, what they like to do, you'd be shocked at what people want to share. People
Mm.
love talking about themselves, their kids, whatever. So I don't mind listening to it. And if we walk away with $32 simple term, hey man, that's what that that's what that conversation led to. And I'm gonna do a 90-day follow-up. I always say 90 days is a good time to follow up. Hey, you
Mm.
know what? Did you receive your policy in the mail? Uh, just want to thank you again for everything. Now they're used to paying that bill, so you know that they're not going to cancel, right? Say if you're ever ready to have a different conversation, or if you ever want to talk about these other products, my door's always open. Here's my cell, right? Um, every once in a while, it's like, you know what, man? Yes, we talked about that IUL. I talked to my wife. Okay, because you gave them time to think. They didn't feel forced to do the first one, so now there's a willingness to be like, okay, like this dude was being honest, he did. Our monthly payments have been this, right? The coverage is good. They've had time to compare with what they had, whatever that is. I've established trust in my relationship, and once I've established trust in my relationship, now I've been able to change the conversation, right? But that takes time. That's not something that I was doing 8, 9 years ago. That's something that has kind of evolved over the last 4 or 5 years, you know? And I think any agent who's been doing this a long period of time, as long as they're engaged, how do you not improve, right?
Yeah. No, yeah, but a lot of agents don't, but you still are, which is great. But yeah, I think the way you do it is just the right way to do things. And you just sleep better at night, I bet.
You
You
know
know that
what?
you did the right thing.
I'll tell you this, I'm really big on people with motorcycles. Like
Hmm.
I'm like a stickler about that one. I'm real like, hey, you know what? It's not like if and when, like you probably should have something, you know? Some people get like, oh, like they're not ready for that conversation. But you're riding a bike, man. It's not if, it's when you're gonna have a fall, right? We had a
They know
24,
that too.
yeah, we had a 24-year-old gentleman. His mom and him came in together. This kid bought a bike, didn't even have the license for it or whatever. He got he got trained to ride it. He got like all the driving courses and all that. And so we wrote a small like $100,000 simple term on him, you know, because he was young, he was paying out of pocket, like he didn't have that much money, but I felt pretty comfortable with at least making sure he had something, right? Well, he ended up passing away, but not from a motorcycle accident. He just didn't wake up. And his mom came in, and I was like, oh man, did he die in a motorcycle accident? No, he just didn't wake up. And he had a life policy in force. Not a lot of 24-year-olds have life insurance, you know? And I was like, man, that's crazy. I didn't think of him as being like someone I was worried about dying just because, they weren't, have a heart attack at 24 years old. But it happens, it happens. And I have a lot of those stories. And because
I
I have
bet.
a dude, I don't know how many death claims I've had, but I don't think I've had any of the death claims on my large life policies. They've been those little ones, that they probably wouldn't have had coverage. Those have been the ones I've noticed have been the ones that we've had to pay out. So
Hmm.
because that happens, it's like, I don't have an ego where I feel like I'm too good for anything that we have to offer. I'm more concerned about like, hey, before you leave, can we at least have something on you or your spouse or maybe possibly your kid or whatever, you know? I think that approach is why my volume is high because I don't get discouraged because the dad didn't want one. I move on to the wife. Or if not, hey, look, you still have a kid here. Like, should we do one on him? It was easier before because we had the discount on the auto for for the kids, right? We if you had a one life policy in the household, the whole household used to get the discount. Well, that changed. So when that changed, I'm not selling it so much on the discount anymore. I'm bringing it up now for more value.
Hmm.
I never really sold them for the discount. I mean, the discount wasn't that big really ever, but it was a benefit, right?
Hmm.
Now I'm like, look, man, I had a 24-year-old that passed away. You know, you want some, or like you possibly going to be a parent or whatever. I don't care how young you are. I'm gonna find a product.
Do you share your personal stories too a lot of times, like your friend and stuff, or
I my buddy, my two buddies, I usually share those like when I do large speaking engagements or whatever, when I'm speaking in front of a district or a territory, so that people can kind of get a feel for like where it came from, you know, because to write this much life insurance for this long, it's
Mhm.
one of those things where I don't even think about it anymore. Like I don't come into my agency January 1st and say, this year we're doing 300. I don't think about it that way. I do think about it in the sense where I'm going to bring it up every time. I'm going to do as many as we can, right? For multiple reasons, right? I'm going to be growing my agency. This is going to be the year I have the most amount of staff. So in order to have that, you need income as well. And if I'm going to get income from doing what people say is the right thing to do, I don't see how you don't wouldn't want to approach it because you're making 45, 55% commission on life insurance.
And it's
That's a
so
lot.
hard to sell anything else. Like you said, it's almost like survival. But but
I don't know
so
where, you know what? Honestly, I don't know where I would have been last year without all that production. Just like my bills, my team. I started a 401k. Everybody has health insurance here. Like my overhead has grown, right? And now there's inflation, right? And you want to compensate your team, right? So it's one of those things where like it's getting really hard out here in California, you
hmm
know? Like I don't live lavishly. I live in a condo. People would think I live in this huge house or something. I have 7,000 PIF and the way money comes in and comes out, it's crazy to me. The cost to do things now is just so expensive, so it's we don't have the freedom right now as an agency force to not write this stuff. It's got to be
you
quiet. It's
don't have the
got to be
luxury.
no, we don't have even you and I do not. You are writing more life insurance than you probably ever have, right? And it wasn't easy at first and it must have been daunting, right? But you're like, you did it one quarter, like I can do it again. And it's the same thing with like the low hanging fruit. It doesn't change from like that agent who hasn't written a one life policy all year. Write something, bro. Like I keep saying the word like, but I see people on social media and they put themselves out there. If that works for them, great. If you're not the kind of person that wants to be loud, then don't be loud, but be efficient, be productive with your time. For some people, making TikToks and videos and they blast them, they might get some type of response from it. I'm on social media, but I really haven't found my niche with insurance on social media. I've always found that I'd rather just be myself. People can see how I live and what I do, and that kind of does its own thing. As long as people know that I'm still in insurance and I still, have my agency and sometimes, my success obviously could help. Well, I'm traveling because I did this. Okay, well, there's a reputable side to that, right?
And you share your sense of humor too.
I post a lot of funny memes. Yeah. But that's just who I am, right? Like I'm always trying to have a good time, right? And you could be having the worst day of the week, But if you write a good policy, I don't care if it's a work comp or a life, you're probably going to feel a little bit better about your day.
That
I
production
yeah, I mean,
always helps.
well, I like insurance, which is crazy. Like I enjoy all of it, you know. Um,
Especially the sales part.
yeah, I'm a competitive person, but I'm competitive with myself. I'll tell you a funny story. I was at the payout, a life payout last week, and there's a farmer's agent, and him and we've talked about like where he's at on the leaderboard versus where I'm at. And he's like, oh, I've been trying to catch you or whatever. And I was like, all right, well, I mean, there's nothing I can do about that. If people are going to shoot for that number or they're going to use it as a baseline, that's cool, right? Like they size themselves up, and that's happened my whole career. Like I've walked around Reno and people are like, I'm gonna beat you this year, and it's like, all right, well, I don't even know your name. It happens all the time. But he told me a funny story because him and I are actually buddies. He said, I went back to my team and I told them that you blew me off and this and that, and that you were kind of like full of yourself. And that like inspired them to want to kick your butt. I said, man, whatever works, bro. I definitely don't blow anybody off, but if that works for you, that works for you. You know,
You're like the most sharing and like,
yeah, yeah.
you know,
I was like, yeah.
guy there. Every time
As a matter of
you're
fact, you were there with me. What am I talking about? You were there with me at the payout last week. At
oh,
that
the
one.
Clipper game? Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And I started laughing. I was like, you know what, man, whatever works. Like whatever works. I find that like I do a lot of that stuff, but man, it always comes back to me in a good way. Meaning like it's okay to give, it's okay to share. What I do will never be what you do. But I don't mind learning some of the things you do and adding them to what I do. Why not? If it's working for someone, if it's something that I can implement naturally, I'll try it, right? I'm just never going to be Dan Kitajima. I'm never going to be Andy Zualaga. I'm just going to be Mike, right? But I don't mind learning and applying, right? And that's why I love making it to those events. Honestly, those are where you learn the most stuff, right? When you and I can spend 2 hours hanging out because we're not going to do that normally. You are busy, I am busy, right? So when we have events like that, that's when you got to take advantage of them. I've learned so many little things at those events over the years. Sometimes it's just even picking up on someone's swag, like
Hmm.
just how somebody carries themselves. It's like, oh, okay, that guy's really professional. He's really well put together or whatever, like I I feel like I can add still to what I do, right? I haven't figured it all out because I see still to this day large commercial agents. I don't know if I've ever seen someone who's like number one in commercial and life. I think they're different but the same, right? I always share things with agents and I say, your auto insurance is required by law, by the state. You have to require auto insurance to drive in California, right? And then your home, for the most part, your mortgage is forcing you to carry hazard insurance. So what have you even sold, right? I think when you're implementing like FFS and life insurance and commercial, now you're having a different conversation. Now you're actually selling products, right?
Yeah, I
That's
feel like if you could sell life insurance, then you could sell anything.
no doubt, right? Life insurance is hard, and
It's the
and
hardest thing to sell.
it's the hardest thing to sell. And let's not sugarcoat it. It's not easy, and it's why a lot of people don't do it. It's very intimidating, right? I my journey has just led me here. That's it. It's just different things in my life kind of happened, and I somehow, I always tell people, I didn't find insurance, like insurance found me. Literally, my first, agent that I worked for, I used to be his banker, and he,
That's right.
he pushed a meeting. He wrote I helped him with a line of equity, and he said, come in and get auto insurance, and the rest is literally history, right? And I never saw myself doing this stuff. I went to school to be a teacher, and now I'm doing insurance. So I do feel like I have a little bit of those tendencies to want to teach all the time, just naturally. But at the same time, I know I can talk too much, and I know that I sometimes can drag things on. So like, I don't like to be long-winded. I try to be simple, and I like to keep things kind of like streamlined. Hey, okay, and you know what? I also don't like to waste time. I'm not gonna like allow a conversation to drag on. Oh, well, my old company this, and I'm not here for that. That happened before. This is what I can do for you, right? Like let's focus on what we got to focus on, because the day moves so much faster now.
Mm.
There are
Yep.
so many more things on our plates at farmers, right? Um, from surveys to having a how long it takes to write an auto policy, like the follow up. It takes so
Billing,
much.
won't pay.
There's so much more brain power needed now just to do the same things that were seemed so seamless 2 years
But
ago.
but it's interesting how that disruption or that challenge is what turned into the opportunity. It's a classic
Hey,
story
honestly,
of
man,
like,
it's the funniest thing. All the things that I was worried about and complaining about, meaning like I was worried about all the change, right? Turned into honest production, But it's gonna happen. You get an agent, any agent, and you start putting him in front of people, more of his clients, I would be shocked if there's not more production. If there's been one real benefit from all of the disruption has been the interaction with the clients. Now, some have been very difficult. Losing long-time clients has been kind of hard for me. Losing clients that are my friends has really sucked, but we're in a market where I completely understand that people have to do what they have to do. I I would have probably taken that personally before. Now I totally understand, you know. But with that being said, I've also had a lot of, you know, um, good conversations out of those situations, and I've written a lot of production from them. So it's been good and bad.
right, but yeah, you making the best out of it.
Got to adapt, man.
Yeah.
We got to adapt. This game changed really fast, and it's changed many times. In my 16 years, things have been different many times,
What would
right?
you say to us agents in California? I mean, you made the best out of it, but I'm sure it's not easy to adapt or just gets daunting. Like, how are you, like, from a mental
You
aspect,
know
staying
what?
positive and
I've surrounded myself with some really good farmers agents. I have some really, really good friends um, that I call. I would say don't vent online. You had a bad day, man. Guess what? Everybody had a bad day. It's not fun right now, you know? And when I realized that I don't care if you have 800 policies or 8,000, everybody's feeling this. As long as for me, it's like, as long as, misery loves company. So the fact that, agents are very relatable right now
yep.
has helped me, not necessarily just to stay positive, but I've been trying to stay more positive for my team, honestly,
Yep.
because they're more beat up than I am.
Do you have the customer service work now?
Man, it's been brutal, right? And the way some of these clients have become, and then sometimes, the entitlement or the lack of taking responsibility on their own, right?
They're not used to it too. Like, well, why do we have to send pictures all of a sudden or pay in full?
Yeah, and you know what?
Everything.
Like people have naturally disregarded mail for so long.
Mm.
So it's been this huge shift, a lot of follow-up, a lot of angry people. That's been the hardest part for me is being talked to a certain way by people that have always been super nice and friendly. And then let's not ignore the fact that rate is
Mm.
really big right now, right? Home rate is huge. That's a whole new adjustment. What I think has helped is that the shift is national, meaning all companies are going through some type of struggle or whatever. Because of that, I feel that's the only saving grace I feel right now is that it's not just us. It's not just
Right.
me. Everybody's feeling the stress. And, you know, I think I'm just a little bit at peace with it because I'm trying not to get too high or too low. I'm just trying to stay even keel. The other day I had this lady call me, man. She was like chewing me out. And I got to the point where I said, okay, I've given you like 6 minutes. If we don't have a solution, like I really can't let you yell at me anymore, because that stuff takes a toll on me or on anybody. And
For sure.
I was literally going to Disneyland and I was just like, man, the happiest place on earth. If this place doesn't change my mood, nothing will. And and it did, like I left everything, I would say too, man, just taking care of myself, like mentally and physically has been very important because mental exhaustion, dude, it's to me even harder than the physical. Like there are days I leave work and I'm just like dead tired, you know, more than I can remember. And it's from a multiple sides of things. Sometimes almost feeling helpless too of not being able to help someone. It's like I really want to, man, but there are just some things that I'm just think products are not as available anymore, you know? And like I told you, man, I've lost a lot of really good, loyal 10, 15-year clients. And those have been the hardest ones to take, because I've established relationships with some of these people. I've known them for a long, long time. So I still struggle with that. I think everybody's going to struggle until maybe the market kind of just calms down a little bit, and it seems like we're trending in the right direction, right? I think last year was just so many things at once.
Hmm.
It's just like change after change after change. It was like, man, like this is a lot of change, but I'm not, you know, I'm not like an analyst. I just, I'm an insurance agent. I control what I can control. And that's the thing, if we just focus on what we can control, I think that's the only thing you can do because the market is just hard.
Then you
I
controlled it the best you can with the production. Had
I
a
used to
banner
get
year.
Dude, I used to like have anxiety over it. Oh my God, another change. Oh man. Now it's like, not that I'm numb to it, but like, okay,
Yeah, seriously, huh?
right? Like, oh, all right. So what does that mean? Okay, and we'll just adapt.
It's more like you're looking at it like objectively. It's like we don't get like emotional or like, you know,
Okay. I'm not gonna sit here and act like I still don't. I just don't as much.
right. Yeah, yeah, it still hurts.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The bonus, stuff like that. Oh
Oh
boy.
man, let's not even get into that, but I'm still having success, right? Um, I got invited back to President's Council, so I'm doing something right. And I I don't mind helping and talking about this stuff right now because it's not that it's come easy to me, but I've done it for like a long time. So I'm not having to reinvent my agency to just hit my numbers, right? But I still have slow weeks. I'm just writing more volume in short periods of time. But
Really?
yeah, so yeah, like now it's like I I'll get 3 or 4 life policies sometimes in one day, and then maybe go 3 or 4 days where there's not a lot of traction, and that's why I take advantage of the opportunities, right?
Right.
I know that times are tough. But today, just this morning before you and I got on this call, my buddy, he was a barber, he's like, "Hey man, times are hard right now. I'm just not going to be able to do this and that," and I'm like, I completely understand. I get it. You know, it's a reality that the economy is much harder than even I can I can relate.
Hmm.
That's what I'm saying. I can empathize. And that's the
Hmm.
one thing that I feel helps me is that I can try to put myself in somebody else's shoes and say, okay, man, I totally get it. If there's anything I can do, whatever, instead of always just being the sales guy.
Right.
Right? I
And I think
think
that goodwill is going to come around too, because one thing's picks up for him, or all those clients that you lost, t taking care of them the right way all the way to the end. I think in the long run, your intent is going to really pay off.
I hope so. Right? The thing is, things will eventually open up again. You know, I think I'm going to be at a point where I'm going to be able to decide how I'm going to approach when the market opens, right?
Hmm.
What do I really want to market to the agency and how do I want to grow it? Do I want to make it a bigger personal lines agency, or do I want to really dive into commercial now? Because personal lines takes up a lot of time. An auto policy feels like it takes all day, from
Mm-hmm.
pictures to the surveys to the one page, the alerts. Like my
This
team, just
the
like I get
servicing afterwards too.
all the time, doesn't stop, right? And then it's like, well, why is this bill double this month? Well, like we talked about it 6 months ago. We're collecting 30% on, and it's almost like everybody's got this short-term memory. I'm not okay with that. It's like, okay, but you don't have a choice. It's the only option I have. What are you gonna do about this? For the first time, it's kind of felt good in a way sometimes to say, there's nothing I can do, right? Like, sorry, before I would be having anxiety over it. Oh my God, what am I gonna do for this guy? Now it's like, I did my best. I know you're angry, but this is all I have. There is a little bit of peace in that. I've come to terms with it.
Hmm.
It's been a long year.
You're like, what about the life though?
What about the life insurance? Before you leave, can I have your social and your height and weight? I have turned some bad conversations into life sales.
That's when you know you're a pro.
That those, I swear to you, man, I had a guy once just ready to cancel everything. And I spent pretty much an hour and a half maybe, and I went through it all. The commissioner, our rate, our loss ratios. This guy's a pretty smart guy. Um, and he was like, you know what? I didn't think you had that kind of knowledge in you. He like, I don't know if he just thought I was an auto insurance specialist, but when I got into everything and I started sharing with him how and what other companies are doing and how some companies are even pulling out of the state or whatever, um, he was like, oh, okay, well, and then he mentioned something about his wife being pregnant, you know, and that's why he was so stressed out.
Mm.
And I said, well, when are you going to buy the life policy now that you're going to be a father or whatever? And he was just like, what? And then we spent another like 45 minutes going over life insurance. It's like 2.5 hours on one person, you know? But after I was exhausted, I literally when sometimes I bring lunch, but that day I left. I went to go have lunch all by myself, clear my head. I was exhausted. Um, but that came probably from the patience, right? Like I didn't want to lose
100%.
him. I didn't want to lose my client for one. And then it's like, okay, I do feel like a broken record. How many times have people called? I feel like I sound like a robot, well, this is how it is. And right now, like I have like a what they call it, like not a skit, but a script,
Hmm.
and it's a natural one because I literally have to explain the same thing over and over. And then this guy started asking me like real questions, and then we dove into his coverage, and then his wife came up, and then his wife being pregnant came up, and before you knew it, we were talking about life insurance, right? I was so tired though, but in this market, that's what it might take to maybe just get a policy, you know?
That's what it takes to win. Not only did you save that policy, that's the battle that's going on in the trenches these days. And some
You know
agents
what?
are just probably not doing that right now
There's a
because they're
OG,
just giving up almost. It's so
there's a,
brutal.
there's a DM buddy of mine who always says, you got to keep grinding. And he calls us grinders, and man, for real. I thought I grinded before. Like this is a real true grind. Every day comes with some challenge, so I'm still super appreciative of where I'm at. We're still succeeding, so I find, that gives me enough to be positive about. But, there's going to be people that watch this who probably are having anxiety about their numbers, you know, and they're going to have to, buckle down and really work a little harder and spend more time to just sustain what they already have. And that's just the nature of where we're at, you know. Do we have to work twice as hard for what we used to make? Yeah, but that's just the cards that we're being dealt right now. You can fight it all you want. It's not going to change it. You can get as angry as you want. It's not going to change it. Either you adapt and you try to be positive about it, or you're probably not going to be here. And that's the really sad reality of where we're at. Is that remember we were talking about the one man shows? Those
Mhm.
agencies are the ones I look at. I'm like, man, I'm some of them are my friends, or I know some people in my district. And I'm like, one man show maybe before, definitely not right now. You know, I don't care if you have 800 PIF or 1500 PIF. That still takes a lot of work, especially if you have a lot of auto. First of all, you can't afford to lose all that auto. And then second of all, one person doesn't have the manpower to maintain that, and we live in a very expensive state. So if you're not writing life, you're probably not going to have the income to hire someone right now because you can't really write auto or home.
And it's a double whammy too, because if you're not writing the life, you don't get the commission from the life, but you also lose out on the commission on your personal lines.
Yeah. And you know what? I know we were going to talk about life, but for me, it's going to be commercial. I'm already doing things differently because I need to add income to this agency. And I think my life insurance is kind of capped in the sense where, I mean, how many more policies can I really write? We're already doing pretty well, but I don't write enough new commercial. So auto and home are pretty much at a standstill. So I feel like this is going to be the first time I'm going to probably bring in a marketer and try to create a team. Even though sometimes I hesitate because I don't like being taken away from the things I like to do, I have to adapt. I'm no different than anybody else. If the company tomorrow went straight commercial and life didn't matter, I would have to figure it out, right? So
It's
I'd rather,
interesting though. Would you not think like, okay, let me write 30 life a month? Like, would that be easier to get from 20 to 30 than starting a whole new thing, you know? Because
it would be, but the thing about life insurance is that it pays really well upfront, but there's no renewals. So I think sustainability and also just long-term, income for the agency, I just need to add another stream. I'm not saying that we're not going to try to write more life. That's
Mhm,
that's a given, right?
mhm,
But I know that my agency has to add more avenues of income, whether that's even Medi-Cal, whatever it's going to be, right?
mhm,
I know that I'm going to be adding more premium, meaning more service, meaning I need more help because I know I can't do all this. I'm limited. There was a time where I was the most efficient person in the office from ECMS and all that. Well, Apex, and I don't know, it's like I'm reading a different language sometimes. Like there's so many nuances to this new system. And every day I'm still struggling with certain things on it, right? Eventually, I think I'll get as good as I used to be on ECMS, but it's been a challenge for me. Maybe I'm just not as good at picking things up as I used to be. And I can admit that. I'm not as techie maybe as somebody who's younger, like the younger person in my office, man, he's like flying through Apex and Policy Center. And I'm just like, how'd you get there? What is that? you know, Contingencies, whatever. Um, so I think all of it comes back and it comes full circle.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but you mentioned you're going to be a teacher and you like helping out agents, but I just want to acknowledge you, Mike, for making a big difference in my career. You may not know it, but all the little experiences, even at the Clipper game, you told me a few things about how you approach the simple life with the greater whole life and how you present the two, and just all the little nuances. But yeah, life insurance, we talked 3 years ago, and my numbers have really helped. And like you said, how agents help others, you're one of them for me. So I wouldn't be here without you. So I just want to thank you for your friendship and not just for me, but helping out so many agents in California and all over the nation with your willingness to share.
Appreciate it, man. We go way back.
Yeah,
We're still here.
I know. And then not only are we here, we're I feel like we ha had so much growth, because
Yeah.
this is when our back's against the wall, that's when you find out what you're made of. And we had no choice. We just, like you said, we had to adapt or die. And not only we're here, but I think we're ready when things open up to be in a better position than most agents. because we survived.
And I'm ready for it too. That's the difference, right? Like I'm gonna be ready. I'm gonna be one of those agents that I'm gonna be chopping at the bit. Okay, we're opening up. I'm gonna have a better team, a more seasoned team. We're gonna be better at all facets of the system. You know, I hope that the worst is behind us because I would hate to go through another 2023. That was just a brutal year all the way around. But if things are turning in the right direction, then I'm glad that's behind us, man, because I don't want to go through that ever again. I don't ever want to go home. Like I never want to go home like that. There was a day, I forget one month, I was driving home and I was going in the wrong direction. Like I was going, I forgot where I was going. I was going down the wrong street. And I was just like, man, like, what is up? Like I am just toast, you know?
That's
Um,
scary, man. That's not on purpose either, right?
no, I just zoned out. I was literally thinking of all the things that had gone on in that day and had changed. I think that's when they were announcing the one pay or something like that. And I was just thinking, man, I have so many clients on NLC, you
The
know,
people have been at NLC for 10 years straight.
maybe 15 for me, you know. And I literally said, God, man, am I gonna go out of business? Like I literally started thinking that way. Like, am I gonna lose my team because I'm gonna lose so many clients? Like those are real thoughts, real concerns, you know? I drove all the way down the wrong street. Well, I mean, not the wrong direction, but just the wrong street. And I remember getting home and I was like, man, I am tired. I need to like, you know. So I would say, you got to find a way to not, you know, burn out because your team is very important and they're a little burnt out too. So all those facets, compensation, take care of them. We're nothing without our teams. So I would say, it's not always, my name's on the wall and I know I get a lot of kudos, but man, I have just like such a cool team where I like to come in and be with them. There's a lot of agents that don't like to be in the office. This is my favorite place to be, you know? So, I mean, we can go on and on, man, but I can literally say that the one thing I'll leave everybody with, especially the agents that are just trying to get started, is you got to get started with something. You got to get your feet wet and you can't be scared of it. You got to dive in, find a product that you're comfortable with and kind of work on that one until you get really good at that one and then move on to the next one.
There you go. There you have it. Yeah. No, the office being your favorite spot. I remember that from the last conversation. I think that even kind of motive not influenced me to like have my place, like you have your memorabilia and stuff like that. So I remember
Yeah.
you sharing that. I was like, oh yeah, you know what? It is true. You want to have your space where you like enjoy coming
It's like a
and
war room,
guarding.
you know?
Yeah.
It's a war room. Like I spend so much time in here, whether it's good or bad. I see your Jordan collection. Like everybody's into something, you know? Like I surround myself around things that motivate me, inspire me, things, I never thought I could have growing up. Because gotta stay humble in some ways. You gotta I always like to feel like I'm that same kid who got started a long time ago. Because I gotta keep that edge. If I start getting uncomfortable, it's over. That production, that system, all of that falls apart. So staying in my lane and adjusting a little bit. I mean, this long now, it's been what's working for me.
Yeah. Yeah, not only is it working, but yeah, you're killing it with the live production. Congratulations again to 249 policies, PC. I'll see you there at the Bahamas.
Yeah, I know.
But
Looking forward to it, bro. We're gonna have a good time.
yeah,
Deserve it
definitely.
too. Well deserved.
Yeah, same here, man. Same to you. But yeah, thanks again, Mike, for your time, man, and your kind of your mentorship to me for the life product and just the camaraderie that we came from the same, time and area, and we're here, so that's something just to be proud of.
We're still here.
And not
We're
only
still
that,
here. Hey man, 16 years in, if we're still doing something right, I'll take it,
what
Because
about all the other agents we used to know?
you know what? I do think what's kind of crazy is there's been some agents that have retired recently or just gotten out of the game. And I think we're at that stage in our careers, you know, like the front nine, like in a golf course. We're, I think, probably on the back nine as far as people that we have known to be like the top producers or whatever,
Legends.
legends. Some of them have reached the point where they're probably retiring or gotten to the age where they don't want to do this anymore, man, because it's hard enough on me. I can't even imagine being 20 years older and having gone through something like that, you know? So I think there's going to be a shift in there too, where a lot of the people that we used to look at are probably not going to be around, you know? And we're probably at the same age that they were when we got in the game, you know? It's the reality of where we're at, you know? So I think that just tells me that, you know, I got to appreciate the moment and kind of take it with what I have. Like, this is probably the most appreciative President's Council call I've ever gotten because, you
Mm.
know, when I was literally on that run, because I was on a massive run,
10-year plus straight.
it was one of those things where I was more worried about not making it than I was worried about making it almost, you know?
Mm.
Then I had a 2 year break where I didn't think I'd ever get back. I felt like, okay, we've gone in a different direction and that's perfectly fine, right? I felt like, okay, that was a great run. That was awesome. Would I ever want to go back? Ah, who doesn't want to be at the top of their game, right? So last year happens and then the new rules changed, right? And I was just like, wow, I have a really good shot, you know? And it felt like, okay, it kind of validated, I think, in some ways where I was and what I've done. So that's a different level of mentality and you know has not much to do with life insurance, but you know there's agents that want to get to PC. You know, like people tell me all the time, what does it take? Like what? You know, I remember you and I we never talked about that. Like
Mm.
PC seemed like something that was not even attainable, right?
Hmm.
And then now it's like people are shooting for it, and that's good. You know, there's actually like a tracker now and things like that. There wasn't for a long time. But I would say like you got to keep grinding, right? Like, and if you're not getting it and you thought you were going to get it, you got to just do better the next year. Because I could have really gone in a different direction, you know, and I chose instead to kind of just double down on what I'm good at, right? And things kind of work out for themselves.
Yep. And yeah, now that you mentioned about where we are in our careers, it's almost like a responsibility for us to carry the torch now.
In some ways, probably, you know,
I mean, you already we already has been a legend, but
I think I do get some people reaching out more than before. And there's times where people are like, want to go to my office or come in. And I'm not as open to it as I used to be. Not because I don't want people here, but I've realized, you know, sometimes it's okay to say no, right? We're a lot busier than we used to be. But there's nothing that you're going to do here in a day that's going to really make that change for you personally. Now, you might pick up a few things here and there and see my team or whatever, but you just have to do the work. You know, like there's no magic wand here. You're going to have to grind. You
you
got to
can't
take
do it by just picking brains.
No, I mean that you're gonna learn a few things,
Yeah, it
but
helps. Yeah.
if you're not taking your own calls, then what are you doing? You can't stay busy doing nothing. You know, people like to be busy being busy, but what are you doing? Right? Like if you're not being efficient, if you're not putting numbers on the board, then that's not a productive day. If you're not prospecting or enhancing your relationships or just, you know, reinforcing your relationships with your clients, whatever, you got it's a time where you have no choice but to get back in the game, taking calls and doing things that you probably thought you were past. I think that's where you can get your feet wet again and generate your own leads.
Yeah, it's a season of reinventing ourselves. And I think this season is just making us better and stronger.
I hope
So,
so.
no, for sure it is, man. I mean, yeah, you could
And I'm
tell by your
tired,
numbers.
man. I'm tired. It's April and I'm tired. I'm like, man, I'm tired.
Well, that's
Uh,
what happens when you write 78 policies already.
it's a
You
good
know,
problem to have. You know what?
yeah,
Not only am I tired, but I'm thankful. I don't
same
mind
here.
being tired. You know, I'm grateful. So I hope this helps people.
No, yeah, it helped me, Mike. So again, once again, I appreciate you help making a tremendous impact on my life numbers, all the little things that I had to ask you for because I took so long to step it up in the life game. but I feel you've been an inspiration this whole time. So
Appreciate it, man. You know,
we're
you've helped
gonna
me too. Trust me, many times, many times. Your numbers can be
uh,
pretty daunting yourself, you know. So not that I size myself up, but I think to myself, you know, how can I get to a certain level, right? And you have systems, and you apply them, and you're diligent about them. I do too, you know, except that we just have different systems for different products. But
yep,
you made it your way, and I made it mine. The whole point is that we're still here, and you know, like I told you, I don't mind helping out right now because I do think there's a lot of good agents that just need a little bit of a tweak, a little bit of help to just stay in the game. That's it. You know, nobody needs to be 100 policies or anything like that. At some point, it's just about doing enough to like maintain your agency and getting through like the rough time because it's
that's
rough.
it.
Yeah,
Just small wins during this time, and I think that's gonna add up to big things later on. You
I
get through
think
this time, then we're gonna be killing it when
I
things are
hope
good.
so. I can't wait. I can't wait. You know. So, all right, my brother, this was good.
All right,
Thank you.
Rick, Mike. No, thanks again for round two. We'll keep in touch and we'll do this maybe every a couple years to see our progress and keep in touch. But other than that, we always see each other around. So
Yeah.
I'm looking
See you
forward
in about
to
a
it.
month, bro. We'll be in
Uh,
touch.
All right.